Hello friends, this is Amy Calandrino. I'm coming to you with the latest episode of the Performance Mindset Podcast. Don't forget that I have the book Perfect to Real launching in April. Be sure to purchase your copy. The show is all about leveling up in business, in real estate, leadership, and life. So each week I bring you real conversations with top performers and mindset experts who are building big lives on their own terms. So if you're ready to ditch perfection, trust your path, and grow with intention, you're in the right place. I have my very first guest, Mike Van Abbeel, here with me today. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me back. I didn't know after that first episode that I would be invited back, but I'll take that as a win and as a compliment that it is. Thank you so much, Amy. And congratulations on your upcoming book. I know I've seen your journey, and I've loved watching every step of it. I think you're fantastic, and what you're doing is really sharing your true self out there. So good job on being that transparent.
Yeah, it was cool because when you first met me, I was kind of my real self, but then just kind of got lost with like having kids and trying to do what I thought other people should do, and so it's really nice to be back to my core. And you're like my favorite client because we have like the same kind of methodology to doing things, and it's very, very fun working together on all these different projects.
Well, I appreciate that. I think what you're really kind of showcasing with your book and on your podcast is that, when you're a small business owner, you wear a lot of hats. And, sometimes kind of changing hats and shifting between different roles can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. You can feel have imposter syndrome. You can always be second guessing yourself. So it can be a little bit taxing on kind of your core beliefs and your level of confidence. And so, I think one of the things that we're going to want to, I know you're going to want to talk about today is, how do you kind of wear different hats and how do you scale your business? Things that I've learned probably more by making mistakes and adapting than being really kind of intentional about it. But growing a business is not easy. It is definitely a challenge. The statistics are obviously against you, and even we've been in business now 21 years. Even with having that much success behind us. We still kind of think, all right, are we doing the right thing? And we still sometimes have to pivot, and it's all good. It's all part of the journey. And talking to other business leaders, I know everyone's facing the exact same problems, regardless of where they are on their timeline and journey.
I can't tell you how many times I'll just be sitting in the car and I'm like, wait, what about this? What about this? And then did I do this right? And you just, but then you just have to as you get more mature in your business, it doesn't really, throw you off as much. But it's good to have that level of caring and wanting to absolutely put your best foot forward and all those things. So you've had a great leap since you were so the podcast launched the end of March 2023. So it's been 2 years since then, and we have been on quite a journey with the piece of property that you acquired on Plant Street. Tell us a little bit about how it's been navigating owning the salon. Now you're a developer, and kind of the process that tell everybody kind of what's happened over the last 2 years and how it's actually kind of maybe led to a better result.
Fantastic. I think before we kind of dive into that, I'd like to kind of zoom out a little bit and kind of just talk about the importance of, in your business, having your systems and operations, your cash flows, all those types of kind of core competencies figured out. We got, with a lot of hard work and a bunch of luck, we did figure it out. We're now at about 60 employees, 2 locations. We own the 2 locations thanks to you, and we're actively looking to grow. And I think in that, you want to make sure that your baseline, your foundation is really set. Yeah. And I think that's probably where a lot of entrepreneurs are still struggling, is kind of figuring out, what are your service standards? How do you do it? How do you teach your staff to do it? Having these kinds of formations, things you need to have in place, but are sometimes difficult to do because you are probably still doing the service or the task at hand. And you're also having to be the CFO and the accountant and the operations manager. So you're wearing a lot of hats. But it is important, if you really want to scale, that you have a very clear understanding of the structure of your business and how you can get someone to duplicate to what you do. That's been probably the hardest part of owning a business. Now, obviously, ours is Salon's a service-based business, but having processes that others can clearly understand, follow, and duplicate to your vision is key to really growing your brand. And I've always felt that businesses who aren't growth focused are going to struggle with the longevity of their business. You've always got to be growing. And when I say growth focused, the biggest growth area is your people.
Right.
You've got to focus on growing your people. You've got to be their biggest advocate. That means education. Whatever education looks like for your industry and getting them to level up on their skill set, that's what's holding you back. If people are holding you back, it's your process is holding you back because you're not investing enough time, energy, resources into your staff to grow them. And when you grow your people, you're growing your business. And I know in our industry, the biggest reason salon owners aren't investing in their staff is because, well, I'm going to put all this energy and all this time and all this money into a staff member and then they're going to leave me.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
That's a scarcity mindset, though.
It absolutely is a scarcity mindset. And yes, you might have some that do leave you. But I think if you set up a structure that is even more compelling than whatever the shiny object is for them to leave, if you set up a structure where you can say, hey, you too can be a salon owner or a business owner, partner up with us, then you've literally created a mechanism where for your own growth, when you're growing them, you're growing your company as well. To give you an example, I've always said to my staff members, if you want your own salon, I totally get it. There's no reason to leave us. We can open one up together. And, with your help, that's how the second location is happening. That's how the Winter Garden location is happening. We're looking at some other opportunities in Maitland and throughout Central Florida. Having that carrot for someone has the ability, but proper coaching and training to be a managing partner along with you, that I think is phenomenal. And that's how I think, Chick-fil-A and other really businesses that I love to follow and mimic after, that's how they grow. I love managing partners. I love growing people, growing the staff. And so that way you've got the team behind you.
Well, and if you weren't growing your staff and the opportunity for another location happen, you would either not have the person ready to do that, or you would be one of these people that would be trying to balance it both, and it would be an impossibility. I think we both have come across businesses before where they don't really have the resources to go from 1 to 2 because all of the control is kind of centralized within a core group. They don't have other employees to go out and do that.
Exactly. Giving up control and basically what is a trust issue.
Yes.
Trusting staff members or bringing on staff members to take on part of the burdens that way you can focus your limited amount of time and attention to bigger picture items, I think is important. You have got to learn to trust. And it is so hard, as a small business owner. You trust your livelihood, what you've built. Your business is like your baby that never grows up. It's like a child that never leaves the house. So, but you have to learn the ability to trust and grow and know that the people that you've hired have your company's best interest at heart as well. But that's a two-way street. You want to make sure that they feel as well that you've got their best interest, that their career and their financial security is also taken care of. So you really want to create relationships in the end. Small business is about creating relationships with your vendors, with your employees, with your clients, and creating it in such a way that it seems intentional and long-term view.
Well, I think too, if your employees feel secure and they feel safe because you have a system. It's just like second nature that you show that you know what you're doing. It's not some chaotic, like we're doing it this way today and this way tomorrow. Not that you might change things. They're going to feel so much more confident, being with you. I've gone through different stages in my growth journey where things were not as organized as I wanted, and then, have, kind of come back to, leveling up. One
of my favorite books on systems is Michael Gerber's The E-Myth back in the day. Fantastic. Love that book. I mean, basically, the whole takeaway is create a system so simple that you can train a monkey to do it.
Yeah.
Love that book. So we took that principle. I've always talked about kind of systems in place, but here's a little secret I don't always. I am actually terrible at creating the systems themselves. I've hired, I have a young man, his name is Chancey, who started out as my front desk person. He's now a manager. Love this kid. Chance, if you're listening, love you, bro.
I love you too.
Absolutely amazing. And he has, I found that I've been able to hire people whose skills complement or take over the areas that I'm not that good in.
Right.
And while I know what I want, implementing or creating the systems that we now have in place was a real struggle for me. For Chance, it was literally second nature.
Oh yeah.
He thrives on it. And so I think it's important for owners to know to do a proper self-assessment of what you're really, really good at.
Right.
And what you're not good at. And the things you're not good at, it's okay.
Yeah.
Hire someone to do that. Give them guidance, or give them the vision of what you want, and let them do what's really in their nature to do.
All right, so we were talking all about E-Myth and your manager Chance and kind of bringing him up, and it was funny before we had this little power surge. You were like, when he asked you certain things, you're like, that's above my pay grade.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's part of showing that you trust them.
Yeah.
I said, listen, I trust you. That's your expertise. Run with it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's important that that way you're not being constantly bombarded with questions from employees. You got to show that, listen, I've trained you, you know me now well enough, run with it. I trust the decision you make. And if it's the wrong decision, we learn something. Right?
Yeah.
Really, then we just move on and we learn something. And so I think that's the really kind of how we created our structure. And so now, we're ready for Winter Garden. And I learned a lot. In these last couple of years, I've learned a lot. I've learned that I don't want to be a developer in the traditional sense.
Yeah, in the traditional sense.
I do love when small businesses that have got their cash flow and their marketing and their systems in place, and when you can get great local businesses together and kind of create something bigger and better than what a national developer would be able to ever do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know a lot of national developers that want to build a shopping center. They talk about synergy. They talk about creating a vibe and all these things, and when you hear national developers talking about creating Instagram worthy, it almost comes across as absolutely fake, because half the time all they really want are national brands.
Right.
And so I'm not knocking national brands that have their place, but when it comes to really creating a mood or really understanding a local market, there's nothing better than local businesses.
Yeah, I do some franchisees and some franchisors, but I would say it's maybe like 5% of my business. My vibe is totally with like independent, local small businesses. Like it's, there's just something to be said about working with those closely held business owners. It's like what you eat, sleep, and breathe. So. Yeah,
and look, and then I think once local businesses have got their business figured out and they feel ready to really grow and scale, I think the low hanging fruit really is to own your own business. It's to own your own real estate.
Yeah.
That way you are actually 100%. For the most part, completely control. And you're not just looking at cash flow, how to pay next month's bill and next month's bill, but you're actually building something of real value and a real asset that, it could have positively impact your family, generations down the road.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain places, like for instance, Park Avenue and other areas that you could try to wait these owners out and you could try to get them to sell, but oftentimes then, you might be better off leasing and making money, and you could always buy something like nearby, but there's certain areas that you might still need to like lease. And
absolutely. I mean, obviously, there's certain areas that there's no way they're ever going to sell because it's such a cash cow.
Yeah.
The owners, and I totally get it. Where then leasing absolutely makes sense. But those aren't the kind of places that you can have an immediate impact in either. I think it's important to look at those areas that are really prime for fantastic redevelopment.
Oh yeah.
And I think what you and I found in Winter Garden was exactly that. It's close by to a really hot market, but not in that market. And it was completely underserved. Very few people drove through it, not thinking it was an area for development. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, now what we're seeing is a few years in, after we've been kind of getting things ready, everybody now is looking at East Winter Garden, East Plant Street for the next big thing. And, luckily enough for us, we had enough foresight and a little bit of luck. And we got into that market before it became the next big thing, which was the same way for us in Ivanhoe.
Yes.
We bought on Ivanhoe before anybody thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And Milk District. We bought that building with your help on Milk District and transformed that before it was really the hot market that it is now. And and so I think it's important to take a little bit of risk, in areas. If you can create the vibe, and I think it's important. If the old adage, if you build it, they will come kind of thing, has worked for us, and now in all these properties we're looking at.
Well, what I've noticed through the process is we were originally going to do about 30,000 square feet, and we were going to have partners, and it was going to be leased and all. And it would have been very easy to go down that route. But then ultimately, that would have taken a lot more time, and then you wouldn't have been able to do as many locations with Mosaic. And, I think also we were able to meet a lot of people along the way that we also then found out were very like-minded and rather own too. So then we created like a condo construct so that we had multiple office owners and multiple retail owners, and then craft through the condo docs and by curating the right buyers and putting together the right vibe, which has been really cool. And it takes a little bit more time to do because you have to think out of, maybe 100,000 businesses in Orlando, maybe only maybe 1,000 might be interested in this kind of thing. Like it's not the common, most people, it's just easy to lease and it's easy to stay on the leasing hamster wheel. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yes, we were initially thinking, okay, we're going to build this awesome, amazing development. We're going to lease it out, get partners and all these things. And it started feeling overwhelming. And I'm not going to say not as much fun, but it was taking up way too much bandwidth. Yeah. And I wasn't enjoying that process as much as I'm loving what we're doing now.
Right.
I know what the space that I love. I love small business. I love entrepreneurs. I love local. I love, giving back to the community. All these things that have, we've been successful and we feel very blessed.
Yeah.
And we want to give back to the community. And I love just meeting entrepreneurs that also get ownership. And I felt that before, when you were talking to people who were more interested in leasing, it was really about, it wasn't about kind of
and it was, what is it for me? Because the tenants always come with the expectation you're going to give them all this free rent and you're going to give them money and, what is it? And then it's just like, I just want to operate my business.
Yeah, exactly. And it was pulling me away from the thing that I actually love to do, which is grow my staff, grow locations, grow my staff, and focus on our salons.
Yeah.
That's really kind of the lane I love. I love kind of the salon industry. I love the industry I'm in and the people that I'm involved with. So I wanted to do a reset. So when we scaled down the size of development, we made it much more, we were able to digest it easier. And now by condoizing the units, we're talking to entrepreneurs who have got their business model figured out
Yep.
and are ready to really grow. And those types of people that like to own kind of have the same
They get it
mentality.
right
They
away.
absolutely
Get it right away.
They're like, yes, I want to be in Winter Garden. Yes, I want to be on Plant Street. They see the future potential. We've had now several things being close to being announced. I was telling you earlier today, there was some proposed soccer stadium, some kind of a semi-pro soccer stadium down the street. I know that 8 Waves, the nonprofit, is looking to do a partnership with Winter Garden for a Winter Garden Children's Museum across the street. We're getting involved in that by donating the house on there. So, owners of great businesses get it. They want to be a part of that, and they don't want to lease. They understand the long-term vision, and they want to own. And I love ownership. I love real estate, and I think it's it should be a component for any local business that is thriving and wants to expand, but also own because they get the bigger picture.
Well, you have something to, pass on to the next generation as well.
Absolutely. So, it's an asset.
Yeah. And then whether you sell your own business, let's just say you could then lease or sell it to that person. It's another asset, like you said.
Absolutely. I mean, maybe in the end, maybe when my wife and I finally decide to cash it all in, we'll own the real estate, and maybe if whoever we sell the salon business to will just pays us rent. And so then we have that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very ownership of a building is actually a fantastic succession plan.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you sell your business or whatnot, then you can at least, you can still be the landlord.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense.
Yeah, and you can kind of space that out. It's interesting. I do see a lot of businesses and business purchases, and ultimately you don't actually have as much control in selling it. I can't tell you how many times like a landlord will hold someone over the barrel, like, I don't want to approve that buyer of yours, or for them to do this, we're gonna need you to do an amendment to the lease, and it's not what it was at, and you lose a lot of control, I feel. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever lease, because there's times and seasons where it could make sense, but ultimately those owners that I see, continue to level up and have, be able to build that generational wealth. Owning commercial real estate is a big component of it,
100%.
Especially if it's owner-occ, because it's owner-occ, you're going to get a lower loan to value ratio. So it's just
banks love owner operators.
They love it,
especially if you've got a couple of years around the a couple of spins around the sun. You got some time.
Yes.
You got some time kind of behind you, a proven track record.
You have a reputation. Like people don't
banks trip all over themselves trying to finance you, because that's really easy. And you can always do an SBA loan for it's a very low down payment.
Yeah.
That you can go down that road for financing. But yeah, banks absolutely trip over themselves.
Well, I could be at Hillstone and have a 2-wine lunch every day if I wanted to with different bankers.
Yeah,
I'm pretty popular with that.
Yeah, that's low hanging fruit for them, and it's low risk. In the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, owning is the way to go.
Well, I think too, again, the folks that I work with tend to be more growth mindset. Like, I'm not looking to work with someone, especially I've been doing this now 15 years, that my highest, you don't want to kill a mosquito with a sledgehammer. Having been through multiple iterations with multiple different businesses, my highest and best use is helping those businesses that are already existing kind of level up. And then I have an associate that kind of works more with the startups, getting them into their first location. But I think you learn those different things, and you learn what is best to do.
I agree. And then, learning and adapting along the way is kind of a superpower. Sometimes you have to pivot a little bit, even, like we did in Winter Garden, you kind of just pivoted. And in the end, I think a little bit of luck, hard work, things always end up better.
Yes.
Than you initially expected. Of course, the one thing it always takes longer than you want. I think that's got to be for almost anything and everything. It always takes longer, and it's a little bit, you're going to have some detours, but in the end, you're going to be happier with the end result.
Well, I think some of the cool end result parts is the more conversations we had, we made changes to the site plan, incorporating different containers into the project, more deck space into the project. reformulating it, and obviously too, this was the first one you've done. But you have great legal counsel, great team. I think that's always very important too. It's like surrounding yourself with a great banker, insurance agent, commercial real estate agent, it all, all of those different things, and you're able to do great things.
And I need to add in, I got to give a shout out to, I have really enjoyed working with the city of Winter Garden.
Oh yeah.
Kelly out there in planning and Mark from economic development have been fantastic. I know a lot of people love to rail against government and whatnot, and this and that. But those two, lots of love. They've done a fantastic job, and they really care about great development. I think, the cities that I've talked to and economic development managers throughout from different municipalities, they want fantastic development, and they will work with you for really good development that doesn't just look like another stucco box. Right. So if you really kind of have fantastic design, great intention, really kind of create community with your development, the city will absolutely help you out.
Oh, I think absolutely. And I think one thing it is I think Winter Garden definitely has vision. I think any successful entrepreneur, I think you have to treat the city like a business. And some cities don't always necessarily have the vision. They say they have vision. When you drive through the city, it's obviously that they don't have vision, and I don't need to say where those places are, but I think Winter Garden, what's amazing about them is they have vision, and they're very collaborative with everyone, and I think maybe if people do complain that something's not approved, it's not in the sandbox. It's probably not in their vision.
Right, and so what I can say about Winter Garden is they know who their customer is. Basically, they're very family focused. And they want family community. And so, that's, if you reach out while doing your due diligence and really kind of draw out what the city would like for the area, and if you can make that work for your development, I mean, that is a win-win. They will definitely help you out, kind of help you get to the point so you can kind of put shovels in the ground.
Yeah. What was one of the most surprising things that you kind of learned along the way? Like, can you think of anything off the...
Surprising? Actually, I think the best surprise was when I reached out actually to the city of Winter Garden. So, the parcel of land we bought has an old 1920s home on it. And I really love kind of older structures. And part of me was kind of sad that we're going to knock this thing down, which was perfectly usable.
You're getting a quote to just throw it away.
Right. Yeah. So so I think the most surprising, the one that I'm happy is happening is I reached out to Winter Garden. I emailed Kelly and Mark. I'm like, we've got this old house. I know it can be moved. Does anybody want it? And that started the conversations with moving the house across the street for potentially being used at the Winter Garden Children's Museum and whatnot. And so those are conversations are ongoing, and I think they should be finalized very soon. I think that was the best surprise of all, that we can take something and repurpose it and reuse it and not just demo things and throw them away, and that we can actually repurpose an old house. I think that to me was the most surprising part of this whole development. And one I'm actually really, really looking forward to that's happening.
Well, it's interesting. It's almost like an entrepreneur's intuition is like you're thinking of something and you're like, and you're looking at the bill to destroy it and you're like, why destroy it? And you thought to actually have the call.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some folks that aren't necessarily successful, are just well, I just have to do it, and don't explore all the possibilities. But the extra time, whether in your business or in development, taking the extra time to explore the other opportunities often leads, yes, you're now have another project, but it's doing good in the neighborhood, and it's achieving a much better result.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely one of those situations where with a little bit of creativity and luck, 1 + 1 definitely equals 3. I mean, my initial thought was, all right, this is a really, really good house. Maybe there's a Habitat for Humanity, which is doing a lot of activity in that area. Maybe we can just move it to one of the empty lots that they have. But the city had even bigger and better visions because they've been actively working with 8 Waves for many years, helping the children in the community there, being mentoring and reading programs and whatnot for them. So this is the part that, like I said, is the most surprising to me and one that I'm really looking forward to kind of completing.
I think it's just such a great community. I actually went to the elementary school when I was in 4th and 5th grade, and I think that community really needs and has been not treated well for a long time. I mean, I think there have been people like Habitat Humanity that's invested there, but I think there could be so much more. And I think also you bringing your business there and other businesses, creating meaningful employment, creating opportunities. I know you're working with the local like VOTEC school as well to create scholarships to employ folks in the area. I think, ultimately what's been really cool is that you can do intentional development. That's like that fosters that vibe, fosters that entrepreneurship, and you can do that.
Absolutely. And one thing I would say to business owners who feel like, that they don't know how to give back, reach out. There are so many nonprofits out there where your talents could be utilized. Pick an area that sparks interest, that speaks to your heart. Pick a nonprofit in the area.
Yep.
Reach out to them. See how you can get involved. Your business acumen, your way of thinking. Nonprofits need that. The VOTEC, it needs that. So they're actively hoping you reach out. They need your skills. So I would say, get involved in the community. I think it's one of the most rewarding things you can do once you've once you've got your business figured out and all that. Get involved. Your talents are needed.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of my success comes from doing good, in the neighborhood. And I've made some wonderful friendships. And then we would have never met too. Like you had donated a certificate to Wine, Women, and Shoes. And it's like, oh, here's some blowouts. And I came in and I'm like, hey, can you fix that? I was going to a local chain franchise that shall remain nameless after, actually, I had a hairdresser. I told you the story of the guy charging me like $800. And so then I went the whole other side of the pendulum, my hair was a mess. And I was like, oh my gosh, I won this. And then we got to meet each other and the rest is history.
I believe, cast out good, it'll come back to you in spades.
It does.
It always does. You might not always recognize it right away, but it always does come back in spades.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like anything I can do to help and help to make this community a better place, it benefits us all. So it's really cool. I'm really excited about where this is going and continuing to also, even though you're working on Winter Garden in that location, we're looking at other locations. So if anyone hears of anything in Central Florida, let us know. He all about vibe.
Absolutely, and I love meeting other business owners who have kind of the similar kind of mindset on how to give back and how to, how always make it a win-win-win. That we're always looking for things, within the greater Central Florida area where we feel like we can have a positive impact, whether that's in Soto, Maitland, Lake Mary, and just that. I mean, there's so many great communities throughout Central Florida that I feel like we could have a positive impact in. So, this is the call, small business owners. If you want to kind of partner up, learn more, just have coffee.
Yeah.
We'll start off with coffee. Let's have coffee and chat and get to know each other, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah. And what's interesting about your business, and we didn't talk about it on this episode, but most hair salons are more 1099. And you talked about from the beginning it being employee, based. And it's interesting, in my book, I talk about, the sports success system. And one of the chapters is radical and not being afraid to do things a different way. And you're doing things in a different way, but it's proven to be very, successful, being able to provide benefits and all these different things to your employees. Do you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. In my industry is kind of has its challenges, and the biggest challenges, of course, that a lot of newer hairstylists, these kids that go to beauty school, they rack up a bunch of debt, and then they can't actually get started. The statistics for our industry are terrible, and it's something that I'm personally really kind of passionate about. So you take 100 people that go to beauty school, 70 will never work a day in their life behind a chair or ever in a salon.
Really?
The other 30 will get started, and about 23 or 24 will drop out a few years into it. It's because it's so difficult to get started. Because there's no more mentoring programs. There's no apprenticeship programs. Everyone is just, rent a chair, rent a space in my salon or in a suite, and you're all completely on your own. And this is, it's an art. Doing hair is an art form. It takes time. You need mentors. You need someone that kind of cares about you, guides you through your journey as you're learning this skill set of hairdressing. And unfortunately, that's kind of gone by the wayside.
And it's not just the hair. There's so much to delivering services that is creating an experience for those that come in.
Absolutely. So for me, it's really all about supporting the hairdresser, giving them an environment where they feel supported. That means with benefits, actual W-2 and whatnot, so they can then focus on the skill set of growing their skills and growing their clientele. And it's a win-win. And it shows up in my retention rate with my employees. We've been blessed that, we have a very, very low turnover rate. Oh,
it's super familiar faces that whenever I come in, and they all know me and say hello. So it's amazing to see, and always very kind. You have a high level of customer service. It's great.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That I got from my father. My dad had furniture stores, and if anybody loved his customer, it was my dad. He was, he absolutely would bend over backwards, sometimes to the point I think of being used. But my dad loved his clients, and I think he gave that to my brother and I, he's also an entrepreneur. And just the love of the art of serving is something that I learned from my father.
Yeah, that's profound. And I think that's something that you emulate for your children. And I think your son is now going through school.
He's going to the Votech out there in Coe Winter Garden area. Great program, by the way. I highly recommend it. And so he of course has bigger visions of taking over what he calls the empire. We'll see, one day at a time. I keep telling him, one step at a time.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. Yeah. But no, I'm excited. I'm excited that he's decided to join the business, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how his journey ends.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. We've got to chat a bit about your business, mindset, the Winter Garden development, Orlando as a whole. Is there anything you feel like we haven't chatted about that you want to share with our listeners?
In the end, I'm just going to go back to, small business owners, reach out to nonprofits. I've been now involved. I think it's been the most enriching part of the last couple of years, just being able to give back to certain nonprofits that speak to your heart. And I think if you do that and you do it with intention of just giving, it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, I second that. So
as always, Amy, a pleasure. I really appreciate your invitation.
Yeah, and then what's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they want to chat?
The pointonplantstreet.com is where the development is. That is street is st.com. And then, of course, my cell number, shoot me a text, 407-928-7238. I'm always available for coffee.
Yes, he loves some coffee, and you take it with cream, no sugar, right?
Exactly.
I remember those things. So, well, awesome. This has been another episode of the Performance Mindset Show. I hope it gave you something to think about. Don't forget to press that subscribe button. And again, don't forget about the book Perfect to Real coming out real soon. You can connect with me, of course, on beyondcommercial.com or amycalandrino.com. Until next time, stay grounded, stay growing, and keep showing up for you. This is Amy Calandrino, signing off.